Time is 7 o'clock, so I'm going to open this evening's meeting. First order of business on the agenda is minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from the 7th.
Motion, do I hear a second?
Was it from the 7th? I second the motion.
It is from the 7th.
Excellent.
All in favor of approval of the minutes from the January 7th meeting? Motion passes 4-0. Evening, Jamal.
Hey guys.
Did you make motions on
I
that?
guess. I'm sneaking it right on the wire, I guess not.
It's all right, we'll get you.
Justin, you're gonna take shift.
As I was talking to Nance about earlier, it's pajamas and Netflix season, you know.
Oh,
so
there you
I'm just
go.
trying to be respectful of everyone's time. Next on the agenda for this evening is the chairman's report. And
Doesn't that mean
as you can see,
something
Dawn's
else?
not with us tonight, but I did text with her a
Make
little
that
bit
mean
earlier.
something
And she
else.
asked me to please remind everyone of the success from special town meeting last week. It was overwhelmingly in favor of the schools and the town in general. For those of you who weren't able to make it, we had a clean sweep. All warrant articles passed overwhelmingly, and I think it bodes very, very well for the schools and the town in general in the future. And it was really nice to see the community come together and do what I feel at least was the right thing. And according to Dawn and I think that concludes the chairman's report. Next up, superintendent's report.
Okay, told Pia was gonna be brief, but as it turned out, got a little longer, so.
As long as it's good stuff, it's good, then we don't care.
It is, there's a lot good to report, so, however, I'll start off just about concerns. There's been a lot of concerns about the hoax bomb threats in Massachusetts and other states. I'm pleased to report that Maynard has not had a bomb threat yet. Great minds. And we are prepared to deal with this, and we've been prepared for quite a while, so I want to share what we have in place. Maynard schools, the public police and fire work collaboratively on the development of crisis teams and preparedness. In fact, over a decade ago, we developed the Maynard Public Schools Emergency Reference Guide. And as you can see, there's actually a section for bomb threats. Right there. So it's nice, it's a flip chart, depending on the situation. It's good information to have. And so we already have had this in place for quite some time. And as soon as this became an issue, Charles went around with all the secretaries to review the bomb threat protocol because they tend to be the person on the other end of the line first. And so all of our secretaries have been updated on that. And thanks to Charles making sure that that happened right away, we were well prepared. In addition, we've had more depth and guidance through statewide documents like the Massachusetts Bomb Threat Response Guide, which was developed with the Fire Chiefs Association, Police Chiefs Association, and the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. And we even have a guide from the U.S. Department of Homeland. So, but in general, though, I was talking to Dawn, and she said, though, that there are some parent questions that maybe I could address. So I'm going to put this all in the blog tomorrow so that it gets out to a broader audience. But, some of the questions are, if we have to evacuate the school, where do the students and staff go? And we recently had a fear of a gas leak. It turned out just to be a puff, but that's a whole other story, at Green Meadow. And that was an example. Each school has a location at the next closest school to evacuate to. Or, heaven forbid, we have a situation where the whole campus is in jeopardy. The police have arranged for an off-site location where all our staff and students would go to. So we do have a point where we would go to if we ever had to evacuate the whole campus. Another question was, if we have to evacuate a school or all of the schools to another location, how do we dismiss the children? Or do parents and friends just randomly pick them up? And, that is a good question. What happens when you have hundreds of kids marching down to the street to another location? And I just want to assure everybody that during every evacuation, the administration and staff make sure that all students and staff are accounted for. In fact, that's why I always sign in, because if there's a fire, I want them to know the superintendent's in the building. Whether, if I'm visiting another building, please find me. But in addition to that, they also bring out the dismissal approval cards. So as parents, we all fill out those cards to say, my child can go with me, but Granny and Grandpa or friends can come and pick them up. And so if we had to dismiss from an alternate location, we would bring in the buses as we would normally do, but we would also have those dismissal cards so that if, let's say it was a rare occurrence and something happened and parents wanted to send their friends down that are on the card, they would be able to do that. So those processes are also in place, but parents don't know, and it's a good idea to get that information out. So I'll make sure that I get that information out in the blog, and I want to share it with everybody here tonight.
Bob, I know with the Alice presentation, they said the location for that, if we go into some sort of lockdown or there's somebody armed on campus, that it's the mill?
Yeah,
The
so.
same spot if it's a bomb scare, and is that, I don't know if it's public or not, but is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so the police have arranged with the Mill on Main, that upper lot, that's the closest to us, that would be our central location to evacuate all staff and students, if we ever had to evacuate the whole campus. Maybe there was a situation where there was a fire between Great Meadow and Fowler, that maybe those two buildings would go to the high school rather than go there. Those are the circumstances that you can't figure out until you're actually in a crisis, and we would be working with the police and fire. Whenever any crisis happens, we're so lucky that the police and fire are less than 3 minutes away, and instantly they come on campus and they take over.
The parents would get a robocall.
And parents would get a robocall from me, maybe even the town. That's the process those are the protocols that are in place, and it's nice for parents to hear that there are protocols in place. So, that's good for everybody to know. We're prepared, and let's hope that we don't have to use those preparations. On another positive note, the Maynard Public Schools are the top story on today's Beacon Villager. The title is Wash, Rinse, Read, Repeat. And so there's an article about the new Libromat cleaners, which I reported on in my blog last week. And in addition to the benefits of having books in there and students and families reading, there's a couple of other benefits identified in here. One was a quote from Kate Markowitz, who's our early childhood coordinator. And she said one of the things that is always difficult is to get the word out to parents as to what supports are out there for them. So she's put flyers out there and brochures for, all kinds of different services that parents may want to access, but they may not get it, especially if their children aren't in school yet. They may not have gotten those flyers. So it's another example of us improving communication, which is one of our goals. And so just want to share that, and that's exciting. And then actually, Jennifer Gaudette was quoted in the paper, and I think she sums it up nicely. The Libromat is a community partnership, said Gaudette. It's not just about when your child are with us during the day. We're an educational organization, and we want students and families to realize and be able to access some of the resources that we have, and we want to increase that partnership. Nice job, Jim.
Thanks.
So that's exciting. Then on another positive note, in the future, the curriculum committee has been trying to bring a movie called Most Likely to Succeed, which is after this book by Tony Wagner and Ted Ditchersmith, to Maynard, because we really want to continue the wonderful book talk we had. This is another opportunity for a philosophical discussion on the role of the schools. And so we've been trying to figure out if we were going to do it on our own, but we had this wonderful opportunity in that the Ted Ditchersmith, one of the authors, has a good friend in Lincoln. And so Lincoln Sudbury had also planned a similar event, and they wanted to include us and Concord Carlisle. So the three communities are probably going to do this together at Lincoln Sudbury High School. I believe the date is in early March. I want to say, just to put it on your, we will be advertising it once everything is definite, but for school committee members, just get on your agenda, March 9th at 7 p.m., I believe is the tentative date at this point. So hopefully you'll be around and be able to attend, because a few of us have already attended a viewing of it, and it was really a very, very good movie to look at and consider. So we're excited about that.
March 9th,
I believe so, yeah.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Lastly, I met with Coach Steve Jones about a CPC grant to improve the Fowler Fields. And during that conversation, he said that in 2 weeks, the CPC will be meeting and beginning to ask questions of all the grants that are being proposed to them. one of the things is, the schools have actually had several grants go before them. One is the Green Meadow Playground, the other one are the Fowler Fields, the other one is the Alumni Field House. And so he said that we should expect to have the school committee want to, the CPC would like the school committee probably to prioritize, because it's a finite resource, the CPC grants. So I just talked with Dawn, and she suggested that maybe the budget subcommittee discuss this between now and then, and if the CPC meets before the next school committee meeting, that, you know, the budget subcommittee could, you know, help frame that conversation, and if not, we could bring it to the full committee if there's opportunity to do so. So I just wanted to share that with you, and that's the end of my report for tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bob. Janelle, you're up. Student representative report. Good evening.
Hi. So we have midterms coming up. Our first one is tomorrow, so that kind of has everyone busy at the moment. And I know that seniors had their mock interviews last week, which I heard went very well. I think it's a very good experience for us to get before we graduate high school. Because when we go in the real world, we're going to need that experience. And I know my grade, which is the junior grade, is planning prom. We have a place set, and we are working on that. We'll see ahead. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Is it public knowledge on your location yet? Can you share that?
Yeah. It's in Gardner. It's called the Colonial Inn.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're very excited.
Also, Janelle, can you tell us a little bit with mock interviews? I don't know exactly what those are. Is that practice for job interviewing, for college interviewing?
So I think most of it is for like internships.
Mhm.
So what they do is they have different people who volunteer to come in and interview the seniors. I think every senior can choose to participate in it.
Yeah, I can add a little bit too, and that is that it really is an opportunity just to learn about interviewing skills, as well as hone your interviewing for college, but also for jobs, depending on what you're most interested in. And it was great because this year we had more community participants than ever. So, like you said, a lot of the interviewees were paired up with students who had an interest in that field. So if I was thinking of going into engineering, I met with an engineer, and he gave me realistic questions that an engineer would face. So it was real, but the great part is the community support around senior project and things like this is just growing. We had so many, usually Jennifer and I get invited to these sort of things, and we were there, but they said, oh, we have so many parents, we don't need them. So it's nice not to be needed.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is citizens' comments. Fair enough. Moving on, budget update, Bob.
So the budget subcommittee met on Thursday the 14th to review the progress of several projects. One is the budget document that is being prepared for town meeting, and the other one is the PowerPoint presentation for the annual town departmental budget meeting on Saturday, February 13th. So we're still working on that, and we're hoping that for the next meeting, we'll have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation for the full school committee to review and make recommendations. And Dawn's leading that, and her drafts are looking pretty good. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting.
That meeting on the 13th, I know that Dawn and I are going to be there, but if anyone, it'd be great to have as many people
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually all of the departments, all the town departments at the library meet, and that's where the town administrator said, well, I listened to your recommendation, you're gonna get X amount of dollars, or, he'll decide whether it's more or less.
When is it? I have the 13th.
Saturday,
but I
February the
don't-
13th.
I don't
It
have a
starts at
time.
early in the morning at 8.
8
Do you-
a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll-
It's a long morning,
yeah.
but there's usually a nice spread
Oh, yeah, good
of
food.
coffee, juice, milk.
Bay
Bagels.
Street being the key.
Nice to see what motivates you.
Okay.
It's a really, you need pastry to that meeting. having sat through it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's lovely and interesting, and I tried really hard to get it out
It's
of the
like a
chart.
bagel plus something else.
It is, yeah,
All right.
but it's good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Anything else on budget update?
Oh, yeah, there's one more document in your packets, and that is the town, the FinCom have been putting together a demographic document that talks about, it's a budget summary document, and so I've included packets in your packets, your email packets, when we prepared the agenda, the draft that I prepared, and there's just some interesting demographic, our demographics are still relatively similar, except that we still see the increases in the ELL, we've seen the increases in our free and reduced lunch. So those are the demographics type of things we report. Also, there's a staffing by year, and I actually wrote adjusted and inclusive grant funding positions because last year, a couple of years looked a little mixed up because we weren't sure if they wanted the grant funded positions in there or not. This year, we just chose to include the grant funded positions because that's what it takes to run the school district. And what's interesting is you can see over between 15 and 16, we had an increase of roughly 2.3 staff members, and 16 to 17, we went up another 3 staff members. So it's been a steady increase over the years, and it was in the past too, which is because the town had generously funded us, and we were able to add staff as a whole. You know, sometimes we change priorities on which staffing we add, but if you look at the staff that's been added over the 5 years I've been here, it's mostly been increased paraprofessionals first, then a few extra teaching positions, and I think we're only getting back to past administrative levels. We're not even close. We've actually reduced that in some years. So anyway, it's interesting. That's interesting data that they like to report out. And then they ask for any budget variances, and they ask for the letter that we sent to the town administrator. So that's the last 2 pages of the letter that you've already reviewed. They ask for any state mandates, and the state mandates are identical to last year's mandates, except that we eliminated the increases in special ed out of districts because they had leveled off. So one of the problems we had going into, that we prepared for them last year has gone away. So that's a good thing. So anyway, I just wanted to share with you the document because as a town, because they consider me a department head. I'm a department head. I have to send this information. I just wanted to share with you because it's very interesting demographic and financial information.
Questions? All right. Moving on brings us to Jennifer, theory of action update.
Great, thank you. So we've done our first of 3 presentations to school department, to the various school buildings. We went to Green Meadow, and we had about a 35-minute conversation with the staff where they looked at the theory of action and looked at the pillars of the strategic planning and provided some feedback. We received some great feedback. One of the pieces of feedback was to change the if and the if-then statement to as we do these things, to move more into that growth mindset, which we have taken, and we'll be bringing that conversation to all of the schools. So thank you. It was a great. It was. It was a great piece. There was a request for some additional opportunities to provide some feedback, so we did craft a survey that we sent out to the Green Meadow staff where we allow them to anonymously provide feedback on all of the different components and pieces, and then also ask some questions about where, if anywhere, they would like to see some follow-up pieces, whether they wanted additional time during staff meetings, half PD days, team time, doing some volunteer pieces after school with just the school sessions, or whether they wanted to do some focus group work with community pieces. So we're continuing to analyze that data as people are filling that out, and we will be providing that survey to all of the other 3 buildings as we go through. We have the date scheduled for the Fowler and the high school, so we should be finished with our school level presentations by March, and so we're hoping at that point to be able to have a better plan on what we're doing moving forward and creating that larger strategic plan document. One of the pieces of feedback that we got from the overall session was just some inquiry into what the different bricks meant, what do the words mean. So we did create a document that we shared out with the Green Meadow folks that we will also share with the other two buildings as we give this information. I think initially the intention of not providing any information was more so that it was more draft-like and people could say, well, this, I don't like this, I want this, or what have you, and provide feedback. But I think the lack of information actually stifled some of the conversation because there was terminology and, you know, positive behaviors, interventions, and supports is a specific program that if you're not familiar with it, you wouldn't know sort of, I'd like to do this instead of that, if you will. So, so we did craft some of that again, thanks to the Green Meadow folks, will be sharing out with the other buildings as we go through.
Excellent.
Yeah.
May I say one thing, just looking at it now, the last draft had 4 bricks under Global Citizens, were they equal, and now?
So there were 4 under Global Citizens. Cultural proficiency was under both, and we got some feedback that having that brick in 2 places sort of provided, seemed as though that was an imbalance, if you will, because there were things that could have been repeated from one column to another and the others that we didn't. And so from that, I chose to put it just into the first column, but that doesn't mean it has to sort of stay there. The cultural proficiency piece was that there's a cultural proficiency on the part of what we do as staff, and how we work with our community members, and then there's a cultural proficiency of our students to sort of understand their place in the world as 2 different pieces. And maybe what it is that we call one cultural proficiency because that's the vernacular of the PD and the things that are happening in the staff range, and we call the other one something else. Like that might be the piece
I
of
was
it.
just thinking, looking at it.
Yeah.
I liked that when it was balanced, because
Yeah.
it made them seem equally important, but that's
The-
a smaller thing.
Yep.
But with cultural proficiency, in my school, we call it cultural competency, but
Yeah,
I think it's essentially the same thing. But I was thinking, that seems to make so much sense with developing global citizens.
Yeah.
Just the ability to communicate across difference,
Yep.
even if we phrased it at that.
Yep.
As the ability
Yeah,
to communicate
yeah,
across difference. I just
yeah.
feel like it, I don't know.
Would
Just
balance.
putting in that piece.
And thank you for that, because it did remind me of another piece of feedback we got with moving, the request was to move the first pillar, which was meeting all students' needs, into the center, with the idea that if that's sort of the hallmark of what we do, and if we don't do that, then the other 2 things can't happen. And so we had an interesting conversation around, you know, at which we, I think, had here, the idea of, is the first pillar the most important? Is the middle, you know, so it was just a really interesting piece, and I loved your thought of doing some questioning and just saying, you know, what does this bring to mind, so that we can get at some of those messaging, because obviously we're creating a visual because we want to inspire some sort of emotion and reaction, otherwise we would just write lots of things that people wouldn't read. So it's really important to think about sort of how the placement, and we did mention the placement of the bricks being alphabetical rather than having them seem as though they had some sort of order. And again, got some feedback that some people would prefer to see them ordered in some particular order, of the most important being at the top. So those are all things we'll have to look at, and it'll probably never be universally accepted or done. We'll probably always see pieces that we want to tweak and change to send some sort of message. But I thought it was a good conversation. I did hear and respect a comment that was made at the end that, you know, talking about all this stuff is not a staff meeting, and it's certainly not part of a staff meeting. And I acknowledge that these conversations are much broader and longer. But I thought it was at least a good start to sort of where we're going. So. I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
I think the only other thing that was raised by the staff was that sort of missing brick was parents / caregiver / families also incorporated into that plan.
Can't discount that.
Yeah, so community partnerships was a thought that we had in terms of maybe changing communicate or doing something about creating community partnerships. So.
Global citizen, it could almost fit under there if we're looking for a fourth.
Create the balance, yeah.
Well, we'll keep working on it. The message is we're working on it. We're taking a good first step at Green Meadow, and we have steps already planned for the other schools, and then we'll come back and report how those go, and we'll just keep working on it. And we're going to have special events. Hopefully that'll help, you know, encourage the conversations that we're trying to find out what what Maynard really would like to see in schools.
Awesome. Next on the agenda is inclusive practice initiatives with Jill.
Well-
Are you gonna stand in for her?
Well, no, so, it's been a busy week, and this is a really, as you can see, this is a very thick document that we shared, and I'm sure all of you would love to read it for a second or third time before we have a discussion. And so we thought we would table it until the next meeting. Jill and I figured it would just be better if we tabled it, and, because there's a lot here. As it is, we were only gonna highlight some of the key issues that the district really should be looking at. But it's pretty comprehensive. The state is really focusing on social emotional needs and including all students, and you can read it in, it's all in here. So we're gonna table it for tonight,
Okay,
and we'll move on, and we'll do that next week.
fair enough. It brings us to the Assabet Valley Quarterly Report.
Okay, so another fun piece of reading for you, about 35 pages, is the Assabet Valley Quarterly Report. Includes this basic financial statements and management discussion and analysis, together with an independent auditor's report for the year ending June 30, 2015. The most important finding that we actually took time to deliberate on as a board member of the Assabet Valley Collaborative was, you can find it on page 35 in the 5th paragraph. It was identified that there was an issue with tracking accounts receivable. And when I was attending those meetings, we had a lot of discussion with the Assabet Valley Collaborative Treasurer and the auditors. And there was a problem identified in fiscal year 2012 and 2013, but then that was overcorrected, and now finally, hopefully, they believe they've corrected the problem. So that's what auditors' reports do. They identify problems, they give you solutions, and sometimes you overcorrect and you still need to fix it. But the point is, at least they're on top of it. And it's nice that these annual audits show that their financial documents are where they should be. And I feel confident that the practices have been put in place to prevent that happening in the future. Also, I continue to report when we see these documents that the new collaborative law only allows them to carry a 25% cash balance, 25% of the total budget. And the good news is they need that money to pay their payroll and to bridge between the revenues that come in. And they've been healthy. They're always right at the 25% maximum. So they're well managed and they're doing well, and they have a lot of really good programs that we access and other districts access. So that's all very positive news in this report. I want to share that with you. The second document is something that I couldn't share with you because there was a hard copy, but I can see you're all looking at it. And it's a glossy document that identifies all the programs and the purpose and value of those programs that the Assabet Valley Collaborative provides. You can see this is a high-quality document. I mean, when you look through it, you quickly understand what they're trying to convey. There's easy-to-read charts. It's organized in such a manner that every program is described in the exact same manner. This is a very nice document. Assabet Valley Collaborative actually hired a marketing firm because the collaboratives are all feeling the concerns that districts are creating programs and they've been declining, all the collaboratives have had declining enrollment in their programs. So now they're competing amongst themselves and with private vendors. And so because they're competing, they feel they have to have marketing to make sure that they get their share of the business. So they actually hired a marketing firm, and we've been seeing it as a board member on the collaborative. We've seen some of the different documents that they've done, that they've organized in this way, that they've made visually pleasing. And so one of the things we talked about was the collaborative doing some kind of collaborative reduced costs for marketing for the school districts. So I just want to let you know I'm exploring that. In the past, I brought to the school committee other large regional charter schools that have done that down in Connecticut, and I just think having a unified message is kind of like the fact that we're actually creating a theory of action and a unified message that's visually pleasing. The next step might be to consider down the road some kind of marketing firm to make sure that all of our documents that go out are really high quality documents. So it's just on a side note, this is a nice document so you can learn about all the programs that they provide, but it's also nice to look at, you know, potentially some high-quality marketing materials. That's all I have under this agenda item.
Any discussion?
I just have a question about with revenue.
Yeah.
I was just noticing on the little chart they have, that transportation, that they get almost 50% of their revenue from transportation. Is that typical? That just seems crazy high.
Transportation, the yellow bus is so expensive.
Yeah.
That collaboratives have had, a lot of collaboratives choose to do different things. So a lot of them got into the business of developing special ed programs because they could do it and they could compete with private schools, and they provided a lot of the school districts that they serve with high quality programs at a reduced cost. Some collaboratives focus solely on transportation. Some collaboratives focus solely on professional development, because we know those are all cost centers for school districts. In their case, the transportation is a big part of their business because it does save districts money. Now, we actually participate with Case Collaborative because their transportation model has saved us a lot of money over time. And that's also, I think, even a bigger portion of the Case Collaborative's business, so to speak. But we like to be in both because we like to have the variety of programs for our students with special needs, that we have lots of options should they need to go out of district. We want the most frugal options, but we also want the best options for children. So we, you know, sometimes there's a little overlap. Maybe ASPET offers one program and Case offers another, and our out-of-district coordinator deems this program or that program to be better for this specific child. It's nice to have options.
Other questions? Okay, moving on to citizens' comments. Question?
Question for Jennifer. The theory of action, is it meant to be a living document? Is it something that's going to be revisited as the district grows and
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a living document and something that we're meant to be looking at, but at the same time, it's also meant to be a foundational document in the sense that it provides, and in my experience in using this in a separate district, is that it provides the administrative team discipline to say, you know, instead of throwing all of these initiatives or, oh, the state wants us to do that and we want to do this, it provides this discipline to say, this is what we're working on, and there's consistency in that. So yes, it is a living document. We'll look at it. We'll constantly evaluate the pieces that we're doing as things come up, but it's also meant to be foundational in some aspects where it grounds us to the pieces that we say that we are. I would say perhaps the part that is less living would be sort of the upper part, where, you know, those pieces wouldn't change, but sort of how we get there might change as the needs of our students and the needs of our community change.
will there be a built-in piece to revisit, or say every, I don't know, 3 months, every beginning of school year?
Sure.
Or end of school year, or is it meant to be just fluctuating?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine that it would happen. There's a couple of things that we're working on in terms of crafting other district-level committees that would provide some guidance in some areas that we're doing. So, for example, one of the things that I would like to launch next year is some district-level curriculum committees. So we have actual vertical alignment between that. I did it this way for the 3 buildings, right? Yeah, but for the 3 buildings, that there's that vertical alignment of the pieces, so that we have a math team that's looking at the math curriculum pre-K to 12, for example. And so some of those groups are going to have some of those more conceptual conversations when they do their curriculum review, to be able to say, this is the direction the field's going in. These are the things that our students are being asked to do when they leave us, so we need to change, for example, how we write our curriculum, things of that nature. So I'd imagine some of those pieces would filter through there, but we certainly could craft, you know, sort of some process by which we evaluate it more frequently than that, or more explicitly evaluating that document rather than some of the pieces we're doing.
Well, it is a living document too. It's a guiding document.
Yep.
I would add that we're going to great lengths to get the community, including the whole community, you know, teachers, parents, everybody, school committee members, to get their feedback on the philosophical direction.
Yes.
So there are some schools we know that their philosophical direction is that we're going to be a rigid, classic testing school system. And that's their philosophy, and they have it in their mission statement, in their vision statement, in their guiding documents. If they have a theory of action, it would be, everything's going to be about test scores. I think this school committee wanted to make sure that we have a philosophy, an understanding of what are our core values, what is a theory, an action, a theory of action that would fit our school district. So while I think it's reviewable for tweaks, I think the philosophical foundations upon which it's built on aren't, I
Right.
think that's what the community expectation's gonna be.
Right.
So, yes, we'll be probably tweaking it because it is a living document, but also there's a philosophy behind it.
Yeah.
That's why I started off with the core values, because, you know, the school committee really valued the Green Meadow core values and just wanted to expand it a little bit for the district, so that there's connections there. But it really is a movement that's been going, you know, in this district, we've been going towards those values, and we just want to make sure that we identify them and that we honor those philosophical understandings of what a quality education should be.
Right.
Or superior education. There was a lot of comments about superior, the word superior.
Right. There are a lot of comments about the word superior, so we might have to revisit that. But yeah, so again, I think that the organizational piece of it, sort of how we do the bigger part, that would be the part we review, and we can talk about what process makes the most sense to keep it living, because it is important that it's, the last thing that I think any of us want with all of the work that has gone into this is that it becomes something that we put on a shelf or we hang up on a wall, and we don't actually live it and we don't do it, so absolutely.
Any other citizen comments or questions? Members' comments and questions?
Did you have a question about that policy?
Oh, I've got info to you guys.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I hear a second. All in favor? All right.
Thank you all.